Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sabbath School. We're glad you are here. And if you're following along online, we're glad you're here also. First of all, I'm going to tell about my week. You folks know, because you've heard me say it before, and especially last week, I don't like Father's Day. And you know why? Now, some of you have children or have fathers, and so you have a little different view, but some of us don't, so we have a little different view. But I got to tell you about my week, which I had every reason to believe would be the worst week possible. It started out last Sunday morning when Rita gave me a new Yeti for Father's Day. Now, she gave me a Yeti a year or two ago. It says Pittsburgh Pirates all over it, so it's cool. She gave me a new Yeti Sunday morning early. It has baseballs and crossed bats on it all around, which is cool. But what makes it really unique is, here's my old Yeti, here's the new one. Considerably taller, considerably larger. In fact, it barely fits into the ice dispenser in the refrigerator. But I can now put ice in it and then pour a bottle of Gatorade in it and takes the whole bottle, which the other one did not. Anyways, that was a nice gift to her. Then she gave me, gift from her. Then she gave me a Father's Day card, but look at how appropriate this is for me. It says, "No cats ever had a better dad." And then you open it up and it says, and I'm not just saying that to get a treat, although if you happen to have one lying around somewhere that no one else wants. Very appropriate Father's Day, because it comes from the cats, and you know I love cats. So that's how the week started. And then a few minutes later, we're getting in the car to go to breakfast, and Glon Jr. called. He called because he wanted to wish me a happy Father's Day, but he knew how I felt about Father's Day. But anyways, he called and we talked for just a few minutes, but he said that he wanted me to know that he felt that I stood as a father figure to people in this Sabbath school. And so I appreciated that very much. Appreciated his call, and it was a short one, just a few minutes. Then got home and discovered this homemade card. It says, "Loyal, true, solid, strong, steadfast, faithful, honorable, firm, dependable." And then it says, "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." I opened it up, and it says, "Mr. Menshausen, we know this has been a hard week for you." Well, that was the beginning of the hard week, although it was getting much better. "We wanted you to know that we appreciate all you do for the church and that we enjoy your stories and spending time with you. May God bring you unexpected blessings this following week. Love, the Cobb family." You know, Chris Cobb sits over here and often reads. And then each of the children signed and wrote a little message to me. Jackson wrote, "We hope you have a better week and that you are able to enjoy your day." And then my little friend David, who likes baseball, says to me, "I really enjoyed going to the baseball game with you and talking with you about baseball." And then the older girl says, "I am a big fan of hymns too. I hope you enjoy your week," from Elena. And then they have "Blessed Assurance, Jesus is mine." And then from Grace, you know Grace, right? Somebody drew around her hand. And then using different color pencils, She wrote her message. Now, this one actually almost looks like she actually wrote something that you could read, but anyways, that's her contribution to it. And there's a gift card, which is nice too. So I very much appreciated that from the Cobbs. And then Sunday afternoon, we came here to the gymnasium for the Arakawa's 50th wedding anniversary, and some of you, I'm sure, came too. And we left in time that I could still see the baseball game, so that was nice too. But anyways, we came to that, and on Tuesday, I got a phone call from Miju. If you've ever spoken with Miju for any length of time, you know it's a real challenge to understand what she's saying. So she calls on the phone, she asks if Rita's home, and I said, no, right now she's not. So she said, well, I wanted to thank you two for coming to our anniversary celebration. I said, well, we enjoyed it. We're glad we could go. And then she said, and thank you for the wind chimes. And I said, well, I got to tell you why we got wind chimes for you. We have wind chimes. They hang on our front porch. And when I'm in the baseball room especially, I can hear them chiming away as I'm watching the game. So I said, we enjoy them so much that we got you wind chimes. So I don't know if she's hung them yet or not, but anyways, that was on Tuesday. Then on Thursday, which would have been Bill's 52nd birthday if he were still alive, normally we go to Pizza Hut, but I said, the Pirates are playing in a doubleheader today. So how about if we go to Pizza Hut on Friday? Well, the doubleheader was supposed to start at 1:10, but because it was raining, it didn't start till 1:50, and it rained through most of the game. Tigers won. The second game was supposed to start at 5:40. It didn't start till 6:10 because everything was pushed back. Second game started bright sunshine. Wow, this is really cool. Pirates get off to a quick 4-0 lead. Eventually, the Tigers tie it up, so it's 4-4 in the bottom of the ninth. And boy, oh boy, talk about rain. I mean, this was a cloudburst. So the game was delayed for an hour and 15 minutes during the pouring rain. At the end of that time, they come back. They're still in the bottom of the ninth. It's still tied 4-4. In the top of the 10th, the Pirates score 4 runs. So they ended up winning it 8-4. But I said to Rita, this is ridiculous. I thought I was going to start to watch baseball at 1:10 in the afternoon, and the last game didn't end till after 10:30 at night. I have spent the whole day trying to watch Pirates baseball. They won one, they lost one. So anyways, so then yesterday we did go to Pizza Hut and saw Jared Raines and his son. They were there eating pizza too. So I told him why we were there that day, which I think he knew. But anyways, so the week that I thought was going to be awful ended up being a pretty good week, and I'm thankful for that. All right, let's have our prayer and begin. Father in heaven, I thank you for this past week. To me, it was going to be a very bad week, but you brought blessings from it, and I thank you for that, and I thank you for everybody that had a part in helping it to be a good week for me. I pray now that you'd be with us as we open your word, to study from it, help us to understand it, and to put it into application in our lives. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Daniel 2. When we started this quarter, I mentioned that traditionally evangelistic meetings always start with Daniel 2, opening night. And if you give out Bible studies, very often the first study will be Daniel 2. And there's good rationale for doing things that way. And that's where we're going to start today, Daniel 2, a familiar passage. I remember years ago when I was a child, I looked at my dad's Bible and he had various verses underlined in it. And I said, "What should I underline in the Bible?" And he said, "Well, whatever you know, underline." So I underlined every word of Daniel 2 because I knew it by heart because I listened to my dad preach it so many times. Daniel 2. Go there and we'll need a reader. We're not going to read the whole thing. You remember this is the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had of, as my son always put it, metal man. The statue of gold, silver, bronze, iron, and clay. Welcome. We're glad to see you. Sorry that you're here alone, but we're glad you're here. All right, let's look at the metal man, and we're just going to do verses 31 through 45. So whoever's reading, read 31 through 45 of Daniel 2 for us, please. Daniel 2, 31 through 45.
You looked, O king, and there before you stood a large statue, an enormous blazing statue, awesome in appearance. The head of the statue was made of pure gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of baked clay. While you were watching, a rock was cut out, but not by human hands. It struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and smashed them. The iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, the gold were broken into pieces at the same time and became like a chaff on the threshing floor in the summer. The wind swept them away without leaving a trace, but the rock that struck the statue became a huge mountain and filled the whole earth. This is the dream, and now we will interpret it to the king. Do you mean? Okay.
We're done.
Keep going to verse 45, please.
Oh, 45, okay. This was a dream, and now we will interpret it to the king. You, O king, are the King of kings. The God of heaven has given you dominion and power and might and glory. In your hands he has placed mankind and the beasts of the field and the birds of the air. Wherever they live, he has made you rule over them. You are the head of gold. After you, another kingdom will rise inferior to yours. Next, a third kingdom, one of bronze, will rule over the whole earth. Finally, there will be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, for iron breaks and smashes everything. And as iron breaks things to pieces, so it will crush and break all the others. Just as you saw that the feet and toes were partly of baked clay and partly of iron, so this will be the divided kingdom, yet it will have some of the strength of iron in it, even as you saw iron mixed with clay. As the toes are partly iron and partly clay, so this kingdom will be partly strong and partly brittle.
Keep going to through verse 45, please.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Okay. And just as you saw the iron mixed with baked clay, so the people will be a mixture and will not remain united any more than iron mixes with clay. In the meantime, in the time of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed, nor will it be left to another people. It will crush all those kingdoms and bring them to an end, but it will itself endure forever. This is the meaning of the vision of the rock cut out of the mountain, but not by human hands, a rock that broke the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold to pieces. The great God has shown the king what will take place in the future. The dream is true, and the interpretation is trustworthy.
All right. We know that well. Metal Man and what the various parts of Metal Man represent. Notice that the title of Sunday's lesson was Daniel 2 and the Historicist Approach to Prophecy. We are part of the group of churches that believe in the historicist position of history and of prophecy. And that's what we take here in Daniel 2. Metal Man is to represent Babylon, the Medes and the Persians, Greece, Rome, and the divided kingdoms. And as it says here on page 97, for example, the British monarchy is called the House of Windsor, a nice English name. However, that name is a relatively recent development, 1917 actually. Before then, the family was called Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, a distinctly German name, because many of the British royalty, though mingling with the seed of men, were blood relatives with the Germans. However, those blood ties were not enough to keep them from war, and so during World War I, and wanting to disassociate themselves from their hated enemies, they changed the name to the House of Windsor. Didn't know that. Somehow I'd missed that one historically. But that's interesting that the House of Windsor only goes back to 1917, and it was Gotha before that. Very German. All right. So Daniel tells the king, you're the head of gold. After you, another kingdom will come, silver. After that, another kingdom of bronze. After that, a kingdom of iron. And after them, an odd mixture of iron and clay, which do not mix together at all, but that's what it would be. How did people address any king in those days? What were their opening words to whoever was king? O king, live forever. Yeah, that's the way they commonly address their monarch. O king, live forever. Well, Daniel's saying, O king, you're not going to live forever, and your kingdom isn't going to last forever. Because after you will come another one. Notice how silver, even to this day, is nowhere near as valuable as gold. Bronze is not as valuable as silver. Iron is not as valuable as bronze. And an odd mixture of iron and clay isn't anything. So there would be a deterioration, which we know well. Nothing is said in the Bible about Nebuchadnezzar's personal reaction to what Daniel has just told him. But in Daniel 3, we see a very different scenario, and we've got to look at this. So I need another reader. And you're going to read Daniel 3, verses 1 through 12. Daniel 3, 1 through 12.
Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, whose height was 80 cubits, and breadth thereof 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dura, in the province of Babylon. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king sent to gather together the princes, the governors, the captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image which Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Then the princes, the governors, the captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces were gathered together unto the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then a herald cried aloud, "To you it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye shall fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king hath set up. And whoso falleth not down and worshipeth shall the same hour be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. Therefore at that time, when all the people heard the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and all kinds of music, all the people, the nations, and the languages fell down and worshipped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Wherefore at that time certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews. They spake and said to the king, Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. Thou, O king, hast made a decree that every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whosoever falleth not down and worshipeth, that he should be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up.
Okay, let's stop right there, but hold the microphone because you're going to read again in a few moments. We've got to get this picture. Go back to the very beginning of the chapter. How big was this image? What was the dimensions? Well, in our modern times, it was 90 feet high and 9 feet wide. There's a big problem with that. If something were 90 feet high and 9 feet wide, it would be shaped like this. Because think about people. If we were in the same dimension as this, if we were 5 feet tall, we'd be half a foot wide. Look around. Is anybody in here half a foot wide? Some of us, you could measure a whole bunch more than a half a foot. No, this is not a statue of a person. This is an obelisk. An obelisk. Now, the Egyptians were famous for their obelisks. This is one in Babylon. It's made out of gold. Considering the chapter we just left, does that have any significance? Gold represented Nebuchadnezzar, according to Daniel, his kingdom. And an obelisk points to the sky. Now, it doesn't say it here, but we have to understand that what he's trying to do is sort of reproduce the dream he had, but make it an obelisk, all of which is made of gold, and pointing to the sky. In other words, it's to be eternal. He's saying, my kingdom is going to last forever, both by the shape as well as it all being in gold. And then how'd you like that list of instruments? Kind of trips off the tongue, doesn't it? Oh, I think it was listed 3 times. The horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, pipes of all kinds of music. Oh boy. And when you hear that, you got to bow down. And it said in verse 7, verse 7, as soon as they heard the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, and all kinds of music, everybody fell down and worshiped the golden obelisk. But then we learn there were 3 people who did not. And who are they? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You learned those names when you were just a child, or Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah in the original. They don't bow down and worship. Now, what's the big deal? Couldn't they have said, well, I think my shoe needs to be tied? They could have. Are they the only Jews there that day? Nebuchadnezzar had brought a whole bunch of them with him. So there could have been other Jews there. Guess what the other Jews are doing? Yeah. Only 3 aren't bowing down. Now, they could have just gone through the motions and be praying to God while they're tying their shoe or sandal or whatever they're doing, or picking up rocks off the ground. But no, they don't even want to have the appearance of worshiping. So there they stand, while everyone else is down on their face in the ground. Okay, and they're reported to the king. 3 men whom you set over all the affairs of this province, a little bit of jealousy there, I think, didn't worship. Their names are Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They pay no attention to you, O king. They do not serve your God, nor worship the image you set up. Wow. He had just said you have to, or you get thrown into a fiery furnace. All right. Now we're going to go forward to verses 17 and 18, please, Sharon.
Beginning with 13?
17 and 18.
Okay. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship thy golden image which thou hast set up.
I think that is so interesting.
Yeah.
If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to save us. And he will rescue us from your hand, O king. Whoa. But even if he does not, we aren't going to worship that image. And you know the rest of the story. In fact, if we asked the children's Sabbath school to come out here right now, they could tell us the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Yes, they're thrown into the burning fiery furnace. How many of you would enjoy that? But they live through it. They walk out of it. They don't even smell like smoke or fire. Incredible. You know, when you think about the story of Daniel, let's look at a couple of verses right now. Let's go back to Daniel 1. And let's see how the book begins. It says, Daniel 1:1, in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord delivered Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, along with some of the articles from the temple of God. Wow. These he, Nebuchadnezzar, carried off to the temple of his God in where? Babylonia. But look at the footnote. Hebrew, Shinar. Now, go back, keep a finger there, we're coming right back, but go back to Genesis 10. Like I said, Genesis 11. Starting in verse 1. Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. Some of you have traveled much more of the world than I have. Have you ever been somewhere where you did not know the native language going on around you? There's a few of us. You don't know what they're saying. You think they're probably making smart aleck comments about you. No, you don't know what they're saying. You don't understand the language. And often we've thought, boy, I wish everybody understood the same language. Well, here's why they didn't. Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As men moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar. But there's a footnote there. And according to the footnote, what's another word for Shinar? Babylonia. So in Daniel, Babylon could be spoken of as Shinar, and in Genesis, Shinar could be spoken of as Babylon. In other words, it's the same place. So Nebuchadnezzar has somewhat of the attitude of the people that built the tower. And he even takes some of the articles from the temple of God. Trying to reproduce, in a sense, what had happened many years before in the plain of Shinar, Babylon, in the building of the Tower of Babel. Ever heard of anybody in recent times trying to do a similar thing? I forgot his name. What's his name? Thank you. Saddam Hussein, that's it. Who saw himself as a modern-day Nebuchadnezzar. Well, Nebuchadnezzar had some good points, fortunately. Saddam Hussein did not. So this is the background of the story of Daniel. This is the world that Daniel and his three faithful friends, as well as a whole bunch of other Jews, are suddenly placed in. They don't understand the language. They don't understand the customs. They certainly don't believe in the gods of the Babylonians. And yet here they are in this foreign land, a foreign land that has been foreign to God for a long time, going clear back to the antediluvians, the people just after the flood, I should say. Okay, so that's Daniel. Now we're going to look at it from the New Testament point of view, and we'll see how similar this is. Go to Revelation 13. We could read several passages here. We're just going to look at one. Revelation 13. And whoever's going to read is going to read verses 11 through 17.
Then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. And he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. He performs great signs, so that he even makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived. He was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name.
Okay, now that passage in the evangelistic meetings that we've all been to countless times, what do we see as the beast coming out of the earth? The U.S. in prophecy. Now, this morning, Rita and I stopped at the little gas station just down the road here, where we have a signs box because we had new signs, July's issue of signs to put in it, which we do every month. As we're riding along, I read 2 articles out of the signs. One of them was about the United States and what it's going to do one day, and it mentioned this passage. And the author listed 10 reasons why we believe that the second beast of Revelation 13 represents the United States of America. I thought, I hope people get that and read it. I hope they open their Bibles and look at it. Yeah. The U.S. in Bible prophecy starts out like a lamb-like creature. A lamb. What do you think of when you think of a lamb? Jesus. A lamb-like beast. A Jesus-like beast. Go back in your minds, hang on, I'll be with you in a little bit, Matt. Go back in your minds to when this country was first formed. Who do you have here at first? Nobody's answering. You don't remember your American history. You have Native Americans. A whole bunch of them, everywhere. I remember one day I had a 5-day plan, this is years ago, many years ago, on Indian Island in Maine. Indian Island is an Indian reservation just north of Bangor. It was a very interesting stop smoking class, unlike most that I've ever had, but on the last night I said to the ladies there, I said, before the arrival of white people, how did you think of yourselves? Because Columbus was the one who said, oh, they're Indians because we've reached East India. Well, he was half a world away, but anyways, what did you think of yourselves before Columbus misnamed you Indians? And they said, we didn't think of ourselves as anything because we didn't know there was any other kind of people around. We thought of each other as tribally. You're a Penobscot Indian if you're in Maine, or you're a Narragansett Indian if you're in Massachusetts, or all these other different titles for Indian tribes back then, and some still carry on. You still have Sioux around, and Lakota, for which North Dakota and South Dakota are named. They saw themselves as different tribes, but had no idea there were white people in Europe or black people in Africa. They had no idea. They thought everybody was just like them, just different tribes. Interesting. So you start with the American Indian, but even though there were plenty of American Indians, they did not live in cities, and you might walk many miles through the wilderness before you met anybody, because this country was just not populated. Go ahead, Matt.
This is kind of a little off topic, but it does go along the lines of prophecy. I know I learned this whenever I was a Freemason, and I'd worked my way up as high as I went. I got a hold of a book called Morals and Dogma,
Okay.
and it was written by Albert Pike in the 1870s. And long story short, he did write about 3 world wars. The first 2 he did write that would be mainly held in Europe. And he did actually write that, and like I said, it was in the 1870s. The 3rd World War will be, in his book, according to what he wrote, will be against radical Islam and a powerful nation backing them up. And as we see things heating up in the Middle East now, we're seeing a powerful nation starting to back Iran. You're starting to see things come. In the book, he did say that after this world war, we will be able to establish the world order as we want.
There you go. All right. Interesting. Interesting observation. All right. So this country virtually came from an uninhabited area when you think of how few people lived in North America compared with the teeming millions in Europe at the time that the United States came along, which was the late 1700s. I'm just trying to think of all the things that I read this morning in the article. Anyways, yes, I believe this is the United States in prophecy. And although it starts speaking like a lamb, like a Christian nation, it would end up enforcing the mark of the beast and even a death decree on those who didn't do it. Wow. And then, as it said here in the lesson, it's hard for us to picture can't remember where it was now. But anyway, it's hard for us to picture how our country could ever turn from being a peace-loving country to enforcing a death decree on those who do not conform to the image of the beast. And yet, I think back to the years when I worked at Newell Brands here in Maryville, and I used to talk with Eric often, and I would tell Eric about how great things used to be in this country when I was a child. People were patriotic. People were glad to be Americans. How about today? Some are glad to be Americans, some are peaceful, but there's a whole element out there that hates both. And to bring it even more recently, what was going on in here 5 years ago right now? Yeah. So who was here in those days? Rita, myself, Bo to run the PA system, and one person to run the camera. That's how many of us were here. For I don't know how many months, we had no services here. And it was different to come here and teach the lesson when there's no students here. But we had a number of people following along online, and we got through it, and eventually we went back to worshiping or studying as we do today. But I remember making the comment during that time, if the day ever comes when we can get back to worshiping, studying together as a class, we still need to do the online thing because there's some people that can't come here. Because in those days, Rita would tell me how many people were following along online. And some of them, she knew where they were physically. There was some folks in Mexico that every week tuned in to listen to our Sabbath school. Why wasn't there anybody here? Because we had decided that COVID was such a hideous thing, and so we're not going to have church or Sabbath school. Well, Rita and I both had COVID twice. The first time was over Christmas and our anniversary. Some people call it New Year's Day. And we both had COVID over that time, and that's when I said, is it possible for us to arrange things so I can sit at home in front of the computer and teach the lesson from home instead of at the church? So one Sabbath, that's what we did. I sat at the dining room table. I had cough drops, I had water, I had everything I might need all around me, but out of the picture of the what do you call it that takes the picture? The camera. Anyways, I taught one time sitting at the dining room table. We did that because we were told you can't go to church because of COVID. If nothing else, COVID taught us that yes, we will follow if we're commanded to. And there are some people that used to attend regularly here that never came back after COVID was over. So it's had its effect on this congregation, on this class. Can we see how the whole country would go after something if they were told to? Yeah. We can, we did. So can I picture the beast changing from a lamb-like beast to a persecuting beast? Yeah, it could happen overnight. Jared, wait for the microphone.
What Daniel said about the scripture, about the speaking cause, could that be legislating laws into existence and judgment to punish by them judicial
Absolutely.
speaking and causing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it could happen like that. We can think of all different kinds of ways it could happen. Matt?
I know I've talked to several people. I minister to a few of them. They call me on the phone and they start talking to me. And then we'll get on the subject about the Sunday laws, and they start obsessing over it, like, because they're afraid of it. And I've said this a couple weeks ago when I was in my class, to have the faith of Jesus. Jesus always talked about being with his people in the kingdom. The time when Jesus looked at the cross, the one and only time he looked at it and was actually focused on it, was when he was sitting in the garden right before he got arrested. And that's where we really need to focus on, is we don't need to worry about the Sunday laws right now.
Right.
Because there's still a lot of dominoes that have to fall before that can come into play. One major thing is they got to get a complete and total worldwide cashless society, because that's the only way they'll ever control it.
They're going towards it.
But it's not here yet.
Right.
So in order to have the faith of Jesus, we don't need to look at what's coming until it's here. We need to look at the world that is going to come and look at the joys that we're going to have from it, and just focus our eyes on that. And when the time of trouble comes, then we just deal with it then.
Remember what the old-time gospel music song said, I've read the back of the book and we win. So that everything written in the Bible is written to give us hope, not to discourage us. So we need to look at that with courage. Now, let's look at one other thing. This is Acts 12. We have enough time, so let's have somebody read for us Acts 12, 1 through 17. And because the time is getting short, I won't interrupt you. Just read Acts 12, 1 through 17.
It was about this time that King Herod arrested some who belonged to the church, intending to persecute them. He had James, the brother of John, put to death with the sword. When he saw that this pleased the Jews, he proceeded to seize Peter also. This happened during the Feast of Unleavened Bread. After arresting him, he put him in prison, handing him over to the guard by 4 squads of 4 soldiers each. Herod intended to bring him out for public trial after the Passover. So Peter was kept in prison, but the church was earnestly praying to God for him. The night before Herod was to bring him to trial, Peter was sleeping between 2 soldiers, bound with 2 chains, and sentries stood guard at the entrance. Suddenly an angel of the Lord appeared, and a light shone in the cell. He struck Peter on the side and woke him up. "Quick, get up," he said, and the chains fell off Peter's wrist. Then the angel said to him, "Put on your clothes and sandals." And Peter did so. "Wrap your cloak around you and follow me," the angel told him. Peter followed him out of the prison, but he had no idea what the angel was doing was really happening. He thought he was seeing a vision. They passed the first and second guards and came to the iron gate leading to the city. It opened for them by itself, and they went through. When they had walked the length of one street, suddenly the angel left him. Then Peter came to himself and said, "Now I know without a doubt that the Lord sent his angel and rescued me from Herod's clutches and from everything the Jewish people were anticipating." When this had dawned on him, he went to the house of Mary, the mother of John, also called Mark, where many people had gathered and were praying. Was it 17?
Yes, please.
Peter knocked at the outer entrance, and a servant girl named Rhoda came to answer the door. When she recognized Peter's voice, she was so overjoyed she ran back without opening it and exclaimed, "Peter is at the door." "You're out of your mind," they told her. When she kept insisting that it was so, they said, "It must be his angel." But Peter kept on knocking, and when they opened the door, they saw him. They were astonished. Peter motioned with his hand for them to be quiet and described how the Lord had brought him out of prison. "Tell James and the brothers about this," he said, and then he left for another place.
Okay. Again, a story that even the children in Sabbath school know, how the angel rescued Peter from prison. Some interesting observations that the author made here. One thing is, Peter knows he's going to die the next day, but he's sleeping soundly. What would you be doing if you knew that tomorrow you were going to die? Would you be sleeping soundly? Peter was. He's sleeping so soundly, the angel has to punch him in the side to wake him up. And then he says, "Throw your cloak on you and let's go." Nothing is said about the chains. The door opens of itself. It's not until the angel disappears and Peter finds himself in the middle of a street somewhere that he realized, hey, this isn't a dream. I really am out of prison. Wow. And then he goes to the house and bangs on the door, and Rhoda goes and peeks out and sees that it's Peter, but she doesn't open the door. She runs and tells the others, "Peter's standing at the door knocking." "Yeah, right, you're out of your mind." No, he really is. takes some convincing, but finally they go to look and find that indeed Peter's standing there. Notice their response. They opened the door and saw him. They were astonished. What have they been doing just before Peter arrived? They've been praying that the Lord would rescue Peter. Did they believe what they were praying? Obviously not, because they're astonished when they open the door and find him standing there. His first thing is, shh, because they're all ready to talk. Shh. And then he tells them that the Lord has taken him out of the prison, tell the others about this, and then he left. What an incredible story. Like the author says here, some believers were spared, others were killed. As we approach the end of time, the same thing will happen. Even Peter, though spared then, eventually died for his faith. So we go on to the mark of the beast. Rita and I have gone to McKay's a couple of times recently. Love going to McKay's bookstore. Do any of you ever go to McKay's? Oh, I do have some people that like McKay's besides Rita and myself. The first time I came home with 4 or 5 books. I'm on the next to the last one right now, and then I'll finish the last one. Well, this last time we came home with a stack like this of books. But neither time did I find what I was looking for. What I really wanted was a catechism. Because in the catechism, the Catholic Church says that they changed the day of worship from Sabbath to Sunday. They openly admit that. They're proud of it. So anybody that keeps Sunday is obeying the Pope. I choose not to. I'm going to choose to do what God says to do, not what the Pope says to do. All right. Comments? Anybody online? Nope. Nobody's talking. Okay, then we'll have our prayer and close our study. Father in heaven, above all, keep us faithful. Faithful to you. Faithful to the end. Whatever we may have to go through, in the meantime, give us grace to go through it and to come out on the other side praising you. Thank you for what we know and understand. And be with us now as we go into the next service, I pray. In Jesus' name, amen.